Hey friends, so today I'm gonna talk about uninstalling your socially inherited bloat. I've had a long day. I just did a bunch of calls. I had like a clubhouse call with a friend for like an hour, hour and a half, an hour, and then I had a call with the guys and girls, the people at the store, and that was interesting. And I talked to them for an hour about friendship and making friends. And somehow, for some reason, I just felt like I should make another video before I go to bed. I guess just to feel like I had a productive day or something like that. And I said that I'm gonna go through all of my book talking points. So I'm working on my book Introspect, and I want to talk about the sections of the book so that it's kind of like I'm promoting my book a little bit, and it's also I'm writing the book, so talking about these things helps me to clarify what the book is about. So it's helping me with my writing as well. And one of the things I want to talk about is what I describe as socially inherited bloatware. Now, bloatware is the stuff that comes on your device, on your computer or your phone or whatever, that doesn't have that you didn't choose, right? That it came installed by the phone itself or by the your service provider sometimes, and it's stuff that you don't want, but it takes up space, it takes up resources, right? I mean, it's a metaphor. And similarly, a lot of people I have found in my conversations with them, they have a lot of socially inherited bloatware. And what I mean by that is they have assumptions, they have beliefs, they have ideas about what they think is good or what they think they want. The desire for prestige is very often a form of socially inherited bloatware, and I have a whole separate section about that. So I'll probably make a separate video about that. Which So what do I want to talk about? I have my novel open, my book is open on my screen over there, and I'm a bit sleepy, so I guess I'm going to reference it a bit more. And it strikes me as the bloatware causes tedious lag. Yeah, so one of the things people very often people argue about the advice, be yourself. And what does be yourself mean, right? Like, you're always yourself. When are you not yourself? Whether you are When you're being awkward, you're still being yourself. You're just your awkward self, right? And when you're being cruel and unkind, you're still being yourself. You're just being your cruel and unkind self. And then you say, oh, you should be your best self. Well, what does that mean? How do you define that? How do you And so how I choose to think about it is, I believe when people say be yourself, what they're really saying, and I guess the more technical and mathy way of describing it is sounds weird, but what they mean to say is, be not yourself, be not un yourself, be un not yourself. And so why are people being not themselves, right? What does that mean? And in my experience, what that usually means is that the people are bringing to the conversation or bringing to the context, they are bringing so there is themselves, there's who they are, which you can't help but bring everywhere you go. You can't avoid yourself. And there is your idea about what you think people want. There is your model of other people's behavior. There's thinking, right? When you watch sports, or when you interview people, when you read about, you can see that I'm sleepy. Um, there's this recurring thing that when athletes perform well and they're in the zone and they score their match winning goals and stuff, and then people ask them afterwards, what were you thinking, what were you doing? They're like, I don't know, it just happened. I was there, I saw the shot, I took it. It's very, they describe it in very kind of it's like they weren't there. And on the flip side, if you ask athletes when they screw up, they miss the penalty and they shoot the ball into the sky, and like they flub, right? They mess up. Very often it's like, oh, I got in my own head. I started thinking, I started worrying about stuff. So what I want to say is that the athlete who's in the zone, they are being entirely themselves. They are being, what they are, their fullness, what they're trained to be, their best self. Whereas when they get inside their own heads, they interrupt themselves. They introduce this model of themselves that gets in the way. They start thinking, what is the keeper doing, and what is the goalkeeper doing, what should I do? Like, when you start thinking, you introduce lag, right? And it's that lag that fucks you up. Like, you don't want to be lagging. You want to be able to interface with reality at the high. I don't know the correct computer terminology to make my metaphors work, but it's with the lowest latency. Is that it? Is with the highest possible throughput. The highest. I can't take myself seriously right now with the words I'm using, but like yeah, it's just having the best kind of the least lag, right? You have the least lag when you're not in your own head, and you dismantle and discard the mental models that not helping you. One of my favorite scenes in How to Train a Dragon, there's this scene where is his name Hiccup? It's Hiccup, right? Hiccup and Toothless, they are training to fly together, and they need to work together because Toothless has an injured tail, and so Hiccup has like the prosthetic that. Anyway, so to fly, Hiccup needs to interface with Toothless, and so he had a bunch of instructions for himself, like position 1, position 2. There's like 6 positions, and there comes a point where they're flying upwards and trying all the positions, and then he gets unhooked from Toothless, and they're falling, and Toothless can't save himself either because he can't fly without Hiccup's help, and he manages to get back on the saddle, and he has, because he's like about to crash, he has to throw away the instructions and just fly by feel, right? And the thing is, he has internalized those instructions by rehearsing through those things beforehand. And similarly, it's the whole use the force, Luke kind of thing, right? You close your eyes and you trust your instincts, and you go by feel. And that doesn't always work, because sometimes you go by feel and you just fuck everything up, and that's usually what makes people become more self-conscious, and it drives them towards feeling like they need to be more to think more, right? To figure everything out, because when you tried being yourself, you messed up. And it is true that you need to investigate and evaluate, but there comes a point where once you've done what's a reasonable amount of investigation and evaluation, and you will never truly 100% be certain that you've done enough, but you do your best, and you come up with checklists or whatever, and even your best might be too much. You do a reasonable amount. There's no one way of answering all questions in advance. Like, you figure stuff out as you go. That's the thing about life, right? That I'm learning at age 30, is that some questions you will find the answers to by living them through your life, and you have to accept that you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to burn stuff, and stuff's going to get screwed up, and you have to be okay with that. And that does take courage, and it can be scary. Where am I going with this? I wanted to talk about bloatware, and I don't want my videos to be more than 11 or 12 minutes. So bloatware is, prestige traps, feeling like you have to do important work, feeling like you have to earn a lot of money, feeling like you need to have a lot of sex. That's a thing that, I think people, one of my beliefs is that people don't actually want sex nearly as much as they think they do. Or, I mean, there's a whole bell curve of range of, so don't at me if you're someone who's just kind of incredibly, have a very, very high sexual appetite. Some people are naturally like that. I have friends who are like that. And I have friends who are completely like ace, like they have no feelings whatsoever. But like, I feel like a lot of culture there is this, because culture, pop culture, pop media, everything, it uses sex as a shelling point. It's a place where people gather their, I mean, it's a so-called universal. It's pretty universal. Everybody who is born there has been anyway. Was it a great idea to make a video and I'm sleepy? I'm just gonna wing it. The desire for sex. I mean, I do think that most people have a desire for sex and sexual intimacy, and they want. Another one of my phrases is people want to be fuckable more than they want to fuck, which is that they don't want the sex as much as they want what they think the sex means, which is, and it can mean those things, right? Intimacy, power, respect, admiration, status, connection, like all of those things that you think sex represents, right? Because actually doing sex well is a lot of work. You have to be attentive to your partner and all of those things. And a lot of people don't actually want a lot of that. I mean, they might. I mean, it varies. It depends on who you're talking to. I'm contradicting myself. But loosely, I do think that it's kind of overrated. It's kind of... And I mean, I'm not an ace person. I would say that I'm a person with a pretty... Why am I talking about this? But I wanted to talk about bloatware, and yeah, just doing. People feel like they need to do important work. People feel like they need to make a difference. They need to change the world, save the world. And the thing is, when I hear people talking about these things, when I hear people talking about these things, the thing I look out for is, do they have this needy? Do they have this sense of resignation? Right. I guess that's the core thing about this video that I'm getting at to the end of the whole video. There's a sense of resignation and almost spiritlessness, like this sense of futility, almost like people just feel like, I have no, like, shouldn't I want to make the world a better place? If I don't want to make the world a better place, am I not a bad person? Like there's that sense of they're not really choosing what their path is. They're not really choosing what they care about or what they love. It's a kind of joyless obligation, and life is too short to live it as though it's like this tedious obligation, right? Like you can shake it all off and start from scratch. Like, some people say things like, the world doesn't need another YouTube video vlogger. Who gives a fuck what the world needs? Do what you want. Do what you think is fun. Do what you think is interesting. If the world needs anything, it needs people who have come alive, people who are free, people who are not obsessively worrying about what other people think. And I'm not saying go all the way to the other extreme and completely disregard society. But, if you were gonna do that, you wouldn't do it just because some guy on YouTube said it. And, most people, I think, suffer from excessive self-imposed social constraint. And often for noble, good reason. Something bad happened and they don't want bad things to happen again. Like, it's painful, right? And I am here to nourish, support, and encourage people to be willing to open up again. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just gonna end this here and publish it, and ask me comments. I'm writing a book about this. It will make more sense in the book because I get to edit it in real time, and I'm not gonna edit this video because I have a book to write. But thanks for hanging out, and I hope you are well, and done.